Today we are gathered together for the Graveside service of Trevor Eyben. I'm Candace Anderson, manager of Lakeland Funeral Home and the officiant for today's service. I'd like to open our service with a prayer. Heavenly Father, please bless all the family and friends of Trevor in whatever it is that you know that they may be needing this day, and may their lives be full of your peace, prosperity, and power as they seek to have a closer relationship with you. Amen. Death is a subject that is generally off limits in our society. We spend much of our time denying its existence and its inexorable approach, even though we all realize that we will die someday. For the most part, however, we try to convince ourselves that the day is far away, and we operate from the premise that we are invincible, until the wheel of fate rolls around to show us just how vulnerable we really are. Death also reminds us that we live in a fallen, imperfect world. We are reminded of mankind's failings, flaws, and limitations. Anytime we stand at the graveside, we are reminded of the shadow that has been cast over humanity because of Adam's sin. Paul said in Romans 5:12, that through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men. The universal nature of mankind's problem is further expressed in Romans 8, where Paul refers to the sufferings of this present time, the whole creation being subject to futility, creation itself being under the bondage of corruption, and how the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now. But with sin comes also the need for forgiveness. Forgive is a big word. It's huge, even gigantic. Just 7 letters, but it's something that takes years to learn how to do well. And more than learning how to do it, it takes grace from God. When someone we love dies unexpectedly, there's a tremendous amount of shock. When a father, a brother, and a friend is suddenly no longer with us, it can trigger very strong reactions, emotions, and questions. Grief is a storm of emotions, and one of the most common is anger. Depending on the circumstance, that anger can radiate in 1,000 different directions. Anger at someone else, anger at yourself, anger at God, anger at the universe, anger towards the person who died, and so on. First, I'm here to say that the feeling of anger is totally normal. There are a zillion reasons why you might feel this way, but you see a lot of ugliness in life from an unwillingness to forgive. We are all human beings with imperfections and failings that we can learn from. As we open our hearts and we begin to forgive and accept the aspects that we have previously judged and rejected, we become more compassionate and loving toward ourselves as well as others. We learn to truly live our lives fully rather than just surviving or waiting for a misfortune to hit us. We experience grief and pain, but we also become able to love with all our hearts. Forgiveness is hard work, and while we need to seek it and give it, we need God's grace to humble us to the point that we realize we are nothing without Jesus and will fail without His help. The Lord promises that forgiveness is possible, even when hurt seems too great to repair. God tells us, "I will remove from their heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh," from Ezekiel 11:19. We experience a heart of stone when we are too angry, too selfish, or too frozen by the pain. A heart of flesh, while it may be vulnerable, it is compassionate. The idea that forgiveness means that sins are washed away is one of the reasons why we sometimes shy away from forgiveness. We sometimes think that forgiveness means forgetting, and that somehow feels wrong. Sometimes we feel we need our resentments to educate us about the people in the world around us, and guide us in the ways we should act towards them. We feel like we need the memory of past hurts so we can maintain boundaries with people. But the Lord is all-knowing and mercy in itself. Therefore, there must be a way for knowing and forgiveness to exist together, a clear-headed forgiveness that forgets nothing and forgives all. When we forgive others, there is a freedom where we are no longer shackled by our own anger. It moves us from our own illusions to a beautiful reality. It is hard work, but letting go of wishes that we can change the past and that we can change others opens room for us to ward off resentment. Each time we forgive, it paves the way for the next time we need to do so. But death doesn't merely remind us of the universal nature of mankind's problems. God did not leave us in the valley or under the shadow. We realize that God has a solution, something greater. We read that death came into the world through the sin of one man, but that's far from the entire picture. We have a precious realization today that God has acted on our behalf and provided us a greater answer to our need. This precious realization is why the psalmist said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil." Psalm 23:4. Our realization is that life has triumphed over death, and mercy and grace have triumphed over sin. This brings us to the interment. Let us remind ourselves that the dead reside not in the grave, but in the hearts and minds of the living. We commit Trevor to the earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust.